Welcome to the Swing Trading with Cycles channel. We're going to do a review of crude oil, and we'll also look at natural gas, and we'll look at some names, but we're going to focus on the actual. We're going to focus on the actual commodity itself, because that's giving the most clear signal. So on the last video, we talked about how if we broke below this line here, that would probably send us down to this line. So we didn't quite get, well, or at least it would send us to test these lows, right? Like that was the low from the last cycle, and also if you just remove cycles from it, that was your last sort of swing low, and so you really needed to kind of hold that level structurally, and we basically did actually, right? We got to that level, and you can see this wick here means there's a furious rally happening on the lower time frames. Let me zoom into that. Look at the hourly chart maybe. So let me just make this auto, so you can see, boom, that's your reversal on the hourly, right? And, you know, not to belabor the point, but multiple time frame analysis, folks. It all works on all the same. It all works the same on all the levels. That is a swing low, right, on the hourly chart. So once we crossed above, I mean, really, so this is a little bit complicated, but we need to get above this too, more or less, right? You kind of want to get above that consolidation zone. So above, like, call it 76.70. We've now made like a $3 move. Again, that's that upper wick. So the way you think about it is this candle is literally creating that upper wick on that higher time frame. That doesn't mean we're out of the woods. I mean, if anything, you would expect a bounce to like right here, right? You'd expect it to keep running, probably, or I should say, you would expect that even if this were a downtrend, like we could still get this kind of rally, right? It's not, we'd have to take out, and again, we kind of talk about this in other videos. You have to progressively take out these swing highs, right? These are all swing highs that we need to take out. This is kind of just a consolidation zone, sort of but we get above this $80.84 level, then we would kind of work our way up. But the thinking is this is heading lower in the near term. And the reason we say that is because of the weekly chart. So we'll just kind of close out the daily here. We'll see how we close. So I should have said this is November 21st. It's middle of the day, so we still have a little bit of trading left. But if you imagine that we don't like close the day at the highs, right? We don't go from red to green, and we close somewhere around where we are right now. We're gonna get an inside candle tomorrow, at least at the opening, right? It obviously could, end up resolving on either side of the range, but something like this, right? Like this little rectangle I've drawn. It's possible that this is going to become our daily cycle low. We would need to cross above the high. And again, we have to see where we trade the rest of the day. But if you imagine that we don't move from where we are now, if we crossed above that level, right, then you could see a world where we get a little inside candle tomorrow. And then if that candle crosses above that level like that, for instance, that is your swing low. And that's your indication that this could be day 40. This could be your daily cycle low, right, which is right around the level that you would expect it. Now here's the rub. What's happening with the weekly, right? So we talked about this in the last video, that this swing high from week 6, once we went below the low from that week, so that is below 84.74. We did that on this candle, that we have indication that we're starting the weekly cycle decline, just like this was a weekly cycle decline, right? After a 9-week rally. So we rallied for 9 weeks, that's your rally, and then we declined, right, into a week 24 low. So the thinking is this is your little rally for this weekly cycle, and now we're kind of rolling over. Now that's how this thing works, right? If we continue to get bullish follow through on the hourly chart, is what we zoom down, when we'll get bullish action on the daily. And if we continue to get bullish action on the daily, this candle will go from red to green, right? And I talked about this in a tweet that I put out earlier today. If you're not following on Twitter, definitely take a look at the link in the description. And so that is above the $80.41 level, right? These are all connected. That's what the multiple time frame analysis is. So if we're able to make a higher high above that, that will also simultaneously turn the green, the weekly candle green, and it'll be a hammer, right? So it'll go from like a deep red candle to a hammer. And that sets us up for next week making a higher high above this week's high, wherever that lands. Of course, it's just Monday, so there's a lot of trading to go. But that's how you form something of a short-term bottom. But if this is our weekly cycle decline, which it looks like it is, right, you'd expect that even this move is going to end as some kind of lower high, like maybe here. before we go on to make lower lows, right? And you can see the 200-week moving average is looming below, right? If, as I suspect, we're in a 3-year cycle decline, and we'll talk about that on the monthly chart, you'd expect we're going to slice through that at some point. And so you wouldn't be surprised to see some kind of move like this into your 3-year cycle decline. And that's what I was expecting. And I also put this on Twitter. This is your monthly chart. I've kind of drawn this. We had this big move down. We have this lower high, right? This is becoming like a cluster of lower highs. And I'll get rid of this graphic so it's easier for you to see. But I suspect we're going to make a lower low. Then we'll get a rebound, right? This will probably be our next weekly cycle rally, this little lower high. And then a final drop into our weekly cycle, our 3-year cycle low. And notice this is the 50-month moving average, this teal line. So we'll probably do, we'll probably dance with that a little bit, the same way that we're going to intersect with the 200-week moving average at some point. And so I'll get rid of this so that it's easier to see. So you can see we had this precipitous decline, 4 straight red months, lower low, lower low, lower low, right? 4 red months, and each month made a lower low than the previous month. So you're losing money, just like hand over fist for these 4 months. Then you kind of consolidate here, basically. I mean, this made a new high, so that kind of teased us. But now we've made a new low below that low. I mean, this is just a structure that suggests lower prices. You can almost kind of think of this as like, if I can draw like a little box around it, you can kind of think of this as a little bear flag, and its final destination is like here, right? It wants to go lower. Now it could fail the same way I talked about in my precious metals video. The gold bear flag kind of failed, but the odds are against that. Obviously, that's the point of kind of playing the odds. And of course, you have the energy names that are still kind of moving, although XLE, oh, wow, what a reversal today. And so, I mean, my God. So we started the day as a red candle that had made a lower low. This is your weekly chart. This is XLE. Man, that's why it pays to understand price action. Fundamentals are great. It's amazing to understand those. If you can understand both, then you got it. You're golden. But understanding what price is doing versus just reacting to emotion, like, oh, it's red, oh, it's green, like, calm down. What are the actual levels? Are we making higher highs, higher lows? Are we doing neither? And so this was a pretty deep red candle, and this is your weekly candle. Again, it's just Monday, so there's a lot of trading to happen. We've now gone from green to red. I mean, there's still even a lot of trading left in the day, right? Like almost, a good 2.5 hours, right? So a lot could happen in that time. But man, this tells you there are buyers in this thing, right? Because this thing was falling, looked like, okay, we're finally starting the weekly cycle decline, right? Or I should say we are starting weekly cycle decline because, we just made our most recent short-term low, like right there, right? And you have this one here, right? And so this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks into the weekly cycle. And so that would have been, that's a bearish top to have that happen on week 7. With this reversal here that we're working on, what this is setting up is a potential bullish outside candle. Now, that would be pretty aggressive, especially for a short week. But you could see a world where we now trade above 94.71 on XLE to complete the pattern, right? We made a lower low. Now we make a lower high, and we kind of continue to move, which maybe seems crazy since oil is kind of falling off a cliff. But as someone was saying on CNBC, right, like oil doesn't pay a dividend or have cash flow. And so there's a different crop of investors in here, probably, to be fair, as well. And, maybe they're seeing this, that like their analysis, again, fundamentals move things. Price just allows us to see the details, is the way I would think about it. And so this is your daily chart, which is causing the weekly reversal. My God, look at that lower wick, right? And so what you're setting up for is, unless we close on the highs, which we could, you could see some action inside, like an inside candle type situation tomorrow. Like maybe, we kind of retest some levels kind of internally. Let's look at like an hourly chart. Let's see kind of what's happening on those lower time frames. Okay, so basically the same exact reversal that we saw on oil, right? Literally the same exact pattern. That's really interesting, right? Because this has managed to go up even while oil is going down. But when you see a reversal in oil, this gets the tailwind. So this reversal happened above 87.83 and then kind of off to the races. And now we're getting followed through on another hourly candle. That's very interesting. And if we look at the monthly, this is definitely setting up a double top kind of situation. I mean, this is a slightly higher high, But it's kind of tough. This is a doji of a month, right? And so unless something crazy happens in the next few days, we may be setting up. We're probably setting up for an inside candle in December, though. We'll probably get an indication if it's closer to the lower end or the upper end of the range, which will give us some bias. But like on the one hand, you could say, wow, look at this consolidation. It's ready to explode. On the other hand, you could say, well, wow, is this thing kind of like topping out, right? Like, something like, when you draw those, well, I meant to, like you get my point. Like one of those sort of domes almost, right? Like around this thing. So it's going to be interesting to watch. The levels are very clear though. I mean, this reversal today is quite telling. I mean, we'll see what happens tomorrow. Tuesday is always important to see, do we get a continuation of the move, a reversal, or some kind of like consolidation like here, maybe an inside day. So we'll be watching this closely. And I'll just look at natural gas as the last thing. So wow, this had a big move up today. So let's look at the daily first off. So I haven't been tracking this cycles wise, but like it's very clear, you're looking at the daily chart, that that's our last big low. That's another low. So you don't need to like be tracking the cycles religiously. You can kind of do it on the fly a little bit. Well, at least once you get experience, right? So we have a high so far on day 11, and today is day 21, right? So that's our high right there. And so you would assume this is going to take out that high, right? That's what needs to happen. And this will have implications for the weekly chart as well once we go to that. So it's day 21, not super. I mean, at the same time, this thing tends to have erratic daily cycles. So it's not like you can say, it's not as much of a like clear cut, okay, it should rally for this long, which I'd say nothing quite works that way. Here are your important pivots on the weekly. So to my eye, right, we have a top on week 7 and a low here on week 16, right? So, this looks to be like some kind of short bearish cycle, right? That had a top on week 6 and then decline into a week 16 low. And this would put us on week 4 of a weekly cycle for natural gas. And again, I'm kind of doing this on the fly here. We'll see how these pan out. Again, as I always say, the price action is more important than the counts. What we have here is a little uptrend on the weekly, although it's a bit precarious, right? Because we have this move and then that higher low. We need a higher high now, something like that. That's what we need to see. And of course, I know just generally speaking, natural gas is very seasonal. I'm sure there's a ton of fundamental factors. If you want to comment, put them in the comment section. That's great. I am by no means any kind of expert on the energy markets. Price action is my expertise. And what I see here is an emerging uptrend on the weekly, which is coming off of this massive decline. So this thing could have little legs, right? And how does it look on the monthly? So we talked about this in the last video. This is where this rectangle is from. That we're probably going to have an inside month next month, right? Given actually, that's interesting, right? This move up has made it more likely that we're actually going to have if it's an inside month, it's going to be so close to the upper end of the range because it all goes back to that level, trying to make that new high on the weekly. Like this, what level is that? $7.32. So that's also your monthly high. So that's going to be really interesting. No reason this thing has to move exactly with oil because it obviously has its own kind of fundamentals and things driving it. But this appears to be pretty early in a weekly cycle. Now the catch is, weekly cycles can top out very early, right? There's no rule that says a weekly cycle has to rally for a certain number of weeks. I mean, this one topped out on week 6, and it was a relatively short one. But this one was pretty long. Like, how long did that last? That was 23 weeks. And you get a pretty short decline as well. This was a pretty long one, right? If your low is like here or even here. So this is going to be interesting to watch. I'll keep updating on this channel. But we'll leave it here, and I'll also try to start posting on Twitter as well, just kind of like quick updates, let people be aware. But thank you again for watching.